Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I was very excited, very happy to be able to see this film. And this is my review. I'm going to say right off the bat that he has wanted to make this film for a long time, and I can see why it was difficult. The sets, the locations, the style, everything he's captured here is big and bold, and it might be one of the biggest films that he's made in terms of everything that he has brought together to make this story. It feels huge. It is a big film, and I think he did an amazing job, but I do have some concerns, complaints, things that I thought about the film that I wished had been different. So to start with, this is Oscar Isaac playing Victor Frankenstein. Victor Frankenstein is the scientist who goes out to make this creature. And the reason that he makes this creature in this film is very different from, I think, what we've seen in, the book. It feels like a tonal change, a different kind of mood and spirit. Victor Frankenstein is raised in this family that it's not a loving family. And Oscar Isaac, when we get to the point where it's the grown-up Oscar Isaac, you can see the effects of that kind of broken family on him. And it leads him to want to solve the health, the science of bringing a body back to life. And not just a body, but like building the perfect human, I guess you could say, the perfect person. Except that, when we get into this is the story of science creating something new. So it's really hard to say human. And it's really fascinating because a lot of the connection here obviously is about the father that wasn't the great father to him, which is a story that Guillermo has wanted to tell for a long time. And we've seen mirrors of that in other things that he's made. But also it ties back to his mother and everything else in this story. And Guillermo has a fascinating approach to this story because it's very different from the tone, the texture, the style that we've seen in his other films. This is supposed to be gothic horror, and so much of what he's made in the past has been really deep horror or horror adjacent and things like that. This, to me, feels a lot more like a fairy tale. It is gothic horror told through the premise of a fairy tale in a lot of ways. And, think Brothers Grimm, not like a fairy tale as in like something that you'd see in a cartoon, more like something you'd read in the Brothers Grimm, and yet still through that lens of the original Frankenstein book, which is a classic, one of the books that has shaped modern storytelling, really, in so many ways. And Guillermo del Toro tells that whole story with a lot more drama. There's a lot more relationships, a lot more about the kind of the world that Victor Frankenstein's creature steps into. And it's really interesting to see how he approaches that. For me, it could have been different. It could have been better, perhaps. I think I wanted a darker tone. I wanted kind of the classic approach to Frankenstein in so many ways. And yet, Guillermo del Toro approaches it in such a different way that it brings something entirely new to this story. I think the problem for me is that as much as I like what he did, it's so subversive to the original story, the original monster, and so many other things that it feels a little disappointing, I'm going to be honest. As a huge fan of Guillermo, I was a little disappointed, and yet when I got to the end, it was such a satisfying story that I do love it. And it's a film that I feel like you need to see on the big screen. I think some of the cinematography could have been better. I think some of the performances could have had more depth and range, and some of that comes back to the script. Oscar Isaac is great, but he's not as great as Jacob Elordi as the creature. Jacob blew me away. It is some of the best character work that I've seen in a while. It is gorgeous and stunning storytelling with this character. Love it. Mia Goth is actually quite good. I think that, again, her script and some of the character work around her could have included her in a better way. I don't think the writing is quite up to what it could have been for her, but she does an amazing job with the character. There's a few character moments in this film that are remarkable. The beating heart of Frankenstein's creature, monster, however you want to call it, you know, his growth from almost an empty vessel to a fully realized human, fully realized creature, because it's hard to say if he's human at the end. You know, that story, there's one scene, one kind of part of his story that turns him into who he is. And I love all of that. It is so well done. So overall, I adore this film in so many ways, but it defied my expectations, which is a good thing in some ways. It's a real growth, I would say, for Del Toro as a director. It's so different from what he's made before, and I'm very curious to see where it leads. But the biggest takeaway for me was that and my biggest complaint, I would say, is that it ties back so much to Pinocchio. And Del Toro did an amazing job with Pinocchio. I think it is his greatest film. I think it's the best thing that he's ever made. And I don't say that lightly, having watched everything he's ever made and loved all of it. But I think Pinocchio was his peak, and it tells a very similar story with so much more depth and heart and richness to that world and cinematography and everything else. And this film feels like it tackles almost the exact same story, but in a different way, and doesn't quite succeed as well. So that's the one takeaway. But the thing that I think is interesting about that is then I would say, go watch this new film when you can, and then go back and watch Pinocchio. Whether you've seen Pinocchio or not, go watch it again, and then compare, because it's such a fascinating story. It still makes me say, go out and see Frankenstein in a theater when you can, because it will be coming to streaming. Obviously, it's coming to Netflix, but if there's a chance that you can see it in a cinema near you, go and see it, because it's gorgeous on the big screen. It's amazing with the music and everything else. So let me know what you're excited about. If you've seen the film, let me know what you thought of it. I'd be very curious to hear in the comments, you know, what you have to say. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I can't wait to have more conversations about Guillermo del Toro's career, because I think he's one of the most fascinating directors working today, and I can't wait to see what comes next for him. Thank you very much.